Friends of the media, have you finished taking photos? Thank you. Let's invite the principal officials to be seated. Welcome to the press conference. We have with us today the Secretary for Constitution and Mainland Affairs, Mr. Eric Zhang, Secretary for Security, Mr. PK Tang, the Undersecretary for Security, Mr. Sunny Au, and the Commissioner for the Development of Guangdong, Hong Kong, Macau, Greater Bay Area, Mr. Tommy Yuen. We have opening remarks to be delivered by the two secretaries. I will now invite Mr. Zhang to speak.
Friends of the media, good afternoon. Welcome to the press conference. Together with the Secretary for Security, I will be introducing to you the work of the bureaus. First of all, I'd like to talk about our work on the constitutional front. In order to implement the decisions of the NPC on the 11th of March and also the NPCSC's decision on Annex 1 and Annex 2 in the Basic Law, and after scrutiny by the Legislative Council, the SAR government has already gazetted the Improving Electoral System Consolidated Amendments Ordinance 2021. And the EC subsector general election has been conducted on the 19th of September. It is the first election after the improved electoral system, and also it is the first election with the principle of patriots administering Hong Kong. It was a very enthusiastic election with the voting rate at about 90%. It has set a good foundation for the next two important elections following this one, the election committee of the Legislative Council in December and the election of the CE in March. And overall speaking, the election has been done in a fair, just, honest, and safe manner. And it has also got improved measures, including the electronic polling register system and special queue system. But then there are also inadequacies, including the inadequacy of ticket issuing counters and the long polling time. The CE has already apologized to the public and has already instructed the EAC to improve measures for the ensuing elections. That is why the CMAB is taking up follow-up action with the EAC and the REO. We are going to summarize the experience and conduct improvements so that the next two elections would be conducted smoothly. We would provide the best facilitation to the public while we enhance the efficiency, accuracy, and safety of the elections. Because of the 2019 COVID situation, there has been an impact on cross-boundary travel between the mainland and Hong Kong, and we are thinking actively of setting up polling stations at the boundary to see whether we can allow Hong Kongers on the mainland to vote. We'll be paying attention to the latest situation of the epidemic in the mainland and Hong Kong to implement mandatory anti-epidemic measures at the boundary to see whether we can set up such polling stations. We'll be taking this up further with the mainland. The Public Officers Candidacy and Taking Office Miscellaneous Amendments Ordinance 2021 has been gazetted on the 21st of May, and it has put in place the oath-taking system under the Basic Law. And it is a very major step in defending the patriots administering Hong Kong principle. We are now having the oath-taking arrangement for all EC members. All members who have been elected and other members have to take the oath by the 15th of October in a written form. Up to yesterday, the 7th of October, we have already received 1,086 written oaths, and we have already made appointments for another 180. That makes up 90% of all members. I'd like to take the opportunity to remind the remaining members who have not returned their written oaths to do so as soon as possible or by the 15th of October, so that they will be included in the final member register to be issued on the 22nd of October, so they become members of the new election committee, and so they can exercise nomination and voting rights in the ensuing elections. Another way to implement our constitutional duty is to complete the scrutiny of the national Flag and National Emblem Amendment Bill. Such has been passed by the LegCo, and also the National Anthem Ordinance has been passed as well. And these national laws in Annex 3 to the Basic Law will be implemented in Hong Kong through local legislation. The regional flag and regional emblem are the symbols of Hong Kong, and they should be respected and protected by law and respected by Hong Kong people. We are going to review and amend appropriately the regional flag and regional emblem ordinance so that they are consistent with the national ordinances. We'll be proposing the amendment bills to the LegCo in the next session. Another legislative work is to pass laws to tackle doxing conduct which invades personal privacy. The PDPA Ordinance 2021 has been gazetted today in order to make doxing a criminal offense. And the PDP Commission has been given the power to mandate the cessation of doxing content, and also the cessation or restriction of the disclosing of doxing-related content. And also, the Commissioner has been given the power to prosecute where there is sufficient evidence. There will also be the stepping of public education and publicity so as to prevent doxing, and also the public will be able to understand what to do and what not to do so they will not be caught by the law. And also earlier on, we have consulted the members of the CA panel on amendments to the Personal Data Privacy Ordinance. We will again consult the LegCo when there are specific proposals. The Basic Law Promotion Steering Committee, headed by the CS4A, will continue to make use of different ways and means to promote the basic law to the public, so the public will be able to have more comprehensive, in-depth and correct understanding of the Constitution, basic law, and one country, two systems. We will be making use of the electronic media and also online platforms in order to organize mobile promotion activities in schools and also in the community. And we'll also promote the research work on the basic law as well. Now I'd like to talk about how we are going to cooperate with different cities on the mainland. In the 14th five-year plan, we have been given status as 8 centers covering finance, I&T, and also art and other areas. The different bureaus are already preparing different strategies and measures so as to involve the different sectors so that we will become a participator of the circulation within the mainland and also a promoter of the international circulation. And we will act according to the principles in the Guangdong, Hong Kong, Macau, Greater Bay Area Development Outline Plan in order to participate in the building of the Greater Bay Area, and we will make the best use of the support for our 4 traditional centers and also 4 emerging centers. The CE has already announced in the PA that we are going to set up a new high-level cooperation mechanism with the Hubei province. We are closely related with Hubei. We are the biggest investor, outside investor for Hubei, and Wuhan is where Hong Kong merchants gather. In all these years, we have already set up cooperation mechanisms with Beijing, Shanghai, Fujian, Sichuan, Guangdong, Greater Bay Area, and the Pan Delta area. And also, we will continue to facilitate Hong Kong people who are on the mainland. And in this regard, there is a big role to be played by Hong Kong offices on the mainland. They have been promoting trade and commerce and also supporting Hong Kong businessmen. But they also go into other areas, including having contact and exchange with mainland cities and provinces to promote Hong Kong and helping Hong Kong people who are on the mainland. In order to reflect fully their function and status, we will take a new review of the status, role, and also work efficiency of such mainland officers to see whether they should be renamed in order to reflect their wide functions. We need the involvement of Hong Kong people to take part in the overall development of the country, and so they should be able to understand better the 14th five-year plan. We are preparing new TV APIs to let the public understand Hong Kong's positioning in the 14th five-year plan, and we will be making such a grand plan easy to understand, and so people can be involved and grasp the opportunities afforded by the overall development of the country. In order to make it possible for people to come back and go to the mainland in an orderly fashion, we rolled out the Return to Hong Kong plan on the 23rd of November last year. It has functioned smoothly. Over 310,000 people have come back to Hong Kong using this scheme, and also on the 15th of September this year, we have rolled out the Come to Hong Kong scheme, so non-Hong Kong residents can come back from the Guangdong province or Macau if they comply with certain conditions. And up to now, there have been 6,000 such non-Hong Kong residents making use of the scheme to come to Hong Kong. About traveling across the boundary, earlier on, the CS4A has already attended the first anti-epidemic meeting between the mainland and Hong Kong, and there has been very pragmatic exchange, and a good basis has been laid. We have agreed that there would be the involvement of experts in order to make preparations, and we are preparing for the second meeting so we can make travel across the boundary possible. Now defer to the Secretary for Security.
Hong Kong citizens, friends of the media, good afternoon. Today I will brief you on the key measures under the Security Bureau's portfolio in the Policy Address 2021, and my presentation will focus on a number of salient points. First, safeguarding national security legislation on Article 23 of the Basic Law. Second, enacting cybersecurity legislation. Third, enhancing law-abiding awareness. Fourth, attracting talents and promoting the flow of talents between Guangdong, Hong Kong, and Macau. And fifth, enhancing fire safety of aged buildings. On safeguarding national security, Hong Kong is an inalienable part of our country. We have the constitutional duty to safeguard national security. The central government enacted the Hong Kong National Security Law at the critical juncture to plug the national security loophole in Hong Kong. In the past year, the Hong Kong SAR government took enforcement action in accordance with the law against various individuals and organizations suspected to have endangered national security, including arrest and prosecution, activating existing legislation, and freezing assets. Many individuals and organizations who have endangered national security have announced their withdrawal, suspension, and even dissolution. The shameless have fled Hong Kong. The national security risk in Hong Kong has now been substantially reduced. After more than 1 year of implementation of the Hong Kong National Security Law, we've all witnessed its achievements. Order has been restored from chaos and society has got back on the right track. However, there are still a small number of criminals lurking about in the community who may endanger national security. We will let them feel the full force of the law. Some of them are extremists mounting violent assaults or planning terrorist activities with a view to causing casualties and disrupting social peace. We will remain vigilant against the threat of domestic terrorism. The police will continue to strengthen intelligence gathering and enforcement action to bring the criminals to justice. We are also highly vigilant against those advocating Hong Kong independence via softer means, such as encouraging, inciting local lone wolf terrorist attacks. The police will take resolute enforcement action against acts of spreading hatred, advocating violence, inciting and encouraging terrorism. The Hong Kong SAR government will strengthen counter-terrorism preparedness and response capability and enhance protection of critical infrastructure by conducting training and exercises and leveraging new technologies such as artificial intelligence and big data. We will improve the legal framework and step up public education and publicity on counter-terrorism. On legislation on Article 23 of the Basic Law, we are taking forward proactively the enactment of local legislation to implement Article 23 of the Basic Law in Hong Kong so as to fulfill our constitutional duty as soon as possible. We'll make reference to the actual circumstances in Hong Kong in recent years and the national security risks facing us. For example, We've seen different means adopted by destabilizing elements to incite and indoctrinate acts of endangering national security. They make use of the media, arts and culture, publications, etc., as a pretext to advocate Hong Kong independence. They collude with external forces to endanger national security, and they also wreak havoc some important and they also spread hatred by disseminating messages online against the central government and the SAR government. They also damage important infrastructure such as the airport and railways in an attempt to paralyze our society. The Hong Kong national security law and existing local legislation such as the Crimes Ordinance provide for offences covering some of these acts. In taking forward legislation on Article 23 of the Basic Law, we will review acts that are not covered by the Hong Kong national security law and existing legislation to tackle the situations and risks above, and also to cope with the most extreme and a variety of circumstances. We are working full steam in this regard. For example, we will make reference to the bill tabled into the Council in 2003 and conduct relevant studies. We'll also study the implementation experience of the Hong Kong national security law and the relevant court verdict, as well as taking into account the actual circumstances in Hong Kong with a view to drawing up effective and pragmatic proposals and provisions. We'll conduct briefings and consultation sessions as well. Legislating on Article 23 of the Basic Law is a complex and colossal exercise. We strive to start the consultation and legislative exercise in the next term of LegCo. Meanwhile, we'll continue to rely on the Hong Kong national security law and local legislation, such as Crimes Ordinance, to review and activate existing legislation to ensure that the law enforcement agencies will have the necessary legal tools to take resolute action against offenders to safeguard national security. On enacting cyber legislation or cybersecurity legislation, in view of the development of smart city, we must improve the cybersecurity arrangement. In light of increased cyber attacks in recent years, there have been significant challenges to critical information infrastructure around the world. These CIIs are crucial to maintaining normal social operation. Any disruption or damage may affect the normal operation of major facilities or even cause serious harm to the economy, people's livelihood, public safety, as well as national security. That is why, in line with the governments around the world, we will also put in place a preventive management system by the CIIs as a preemptive measure. Apart from demanding good practices from the industry, we'll also prepare for the cybersecurity legislation exercise so that there will be clear delineation of cybersecurity obligations for the operators. We will consult the sector and conduct a public consultation on the matter as well. On enhancing law-abiding awareness, the Hong Kong SAR government will continue to spread the message of national security and the prevention of acts of endangering national security. We will step up publicity and education as well, especially for our young people. Under the influence of the black-clad violence, the overall law-abiding awareness of our society, particularly among young people, has weakened to the extent that there's been an increase in the number of young offenders and the severity of crimes. In order to cultivate the positive thinking and law-abiding awareness, a sense of discipline and team spirit of young people, the 6 disciplined services and the 2 auxiliary services under our Bureau will enhance their youth engagement work and establish or expand the work in youth uniformed groups. In addition, the Correctional Services Development Department and the police will roll out programs including the Walk with Youth program and a youth lab, as well as a change lab, so as to enhance moral and civic education for young offenders, so as to enhance their law-abiding awareness and help them get back on the right track. In terms of attracting talents and facilitating flow of talents in the Greater Bay Area, in order to sustain Hong Kong's development, we need to expand our talent pool and provide facilitation measures to enhance our edge and promote economic development. The Quality Migrant Admission Scheme administered by the Immigration Department has successfully attracted international and mainland talents to make contributions to Hong Kong. We received close to 4,000 applications in 2020 alone, and over 1,700 talents came from more than 10 countries and territories have been allotted quotas. In order to compete for talents globally, we will double the quotas under the QMAS from 2,000 to 4,000 to attract talents from around the world to work in Hong Kong. On the other hand, we will facilitate talent flow within the Greater Bay Area, especially for non-Hong Kong residents to travel to Greater Bay Area for business, for research, exchanges, visits, etc. The SAR government has put forward a proposal to the central government to strive for the implementation of GBA visa or endorsement to facilitate the flow of business and tech talents between the south and the north, and the relevant authorities are actively considering our proposal. The Security Bureau and Immigration Department and the relevant policy bureaus will actively take this proposal forward for early implementation, because this will help attract foreign businesses and talents to come to Hong Kong. With development of the Greater Bay Area and Hong Kong's integration in the overall development plan of the country, we'll continue to collaborate with the Shenzhen municipal government to enhance our border capacity and provide border clearance facilitation. In terms of redevelopment of Hong Kong Port, we have started a discussion on a new clearance model called collaborative inspection and joint clearance, so as to construct the port building as soon as possible. On enhancing the fire safety of aged buildings, this is an issue close to the heart of the public. In terms of fire safety for aged buildings, the Fire Safety Buildings Ordinance came into operation in 2007. The Fire Services Department and the Buildings Department have been sparing no effort in enforcing the law and providing technical and financial support to aged building owners, including the Fire Safety Improvement Works Subsidy Scheme. But some aged buildings, including 3 without buildings, are still not properly managed. In order to enhance fire safety in these buildings, we will make reference to the existing mechanism under the Buildings Ordinance to amend the Fire Safety Buildings Ordinance and empower the FSD and BD to compel fire safety improvement works for composite and domestic buildings that are dilapidated, and to recover costs from the relevant owners upon completion of work. The public consultation will be launched in 2002 so that the mechanism can be drawn up and the legislation be amended to authorize the department with the work.
以下呢係提問嘅時間，咁想請傳媒朋友呢喺提問之前先講出你所屬嘅傳媒機構，唔該。左手邊攝影機嗰位白色衫嘅男士啊。
你好，幾位東方日報嘅，想問翻阿鄧局長先，因為關於國安法嗰度咧，其實施政報告都大篇幅講到話點樣教育宣傳國安法啦。咁其實喺即係臨近雙十嗰方面，之前局長都講過雙十問題，其實可唔可以講翻清楚點樣為之即係慶祝或者唔慶祝雙十嘅問題叫做係違法定唔違法嘅問題，可唔可以喺度再講清楚一次咧？另外都想就係繼續跟進翻國安法嘅嘢。
An offense. I'd like to ask Mr. Tang, after the NSL is implemented, how the celebration of October 10th will constitute an offense, and also how you can restore confidence after the implementation of NSA. As you know, Chen Tong-kai is still in Hong Kong. How are you following up the issue? Also, Mr. Zhang, about public officers taking oaths, the civil servants have all taken an oath. Who else will have to take the oath? And you talked about the election committee members taking written oaths. If people do not return the written oath by the deadline, what will be the arrangement? You also talk about polling at the EC election. The next election is not far away. When will you complete the review, and have you already identified possible problems? Thank you for the questions. First, about education and publicity on Hong Kong NSL. In Section 9 of NSL, it says that the Hong Kong SAR should step up defending national security. And to schools, media, and also the community, we have the responsibility to publicize the NSL and also supervise the implementation of the NSL. That will be done by all bureaus and departments and not just the Security Bureau. Say the Education Bureau is also promoting the education in schools. You also talked about October 10th. According to the Chinese Constitution, Taiwan is a part of China. Anyone making use of any ways or means to promote independence of Taiwan from China, it may constitute endangering national security and also therefore an offense under the NSL. I would warn every citizen in Hong Kong, if you intend to display certain articles or do certain acts making use of October 10th so that Taiwan will be separated from China, then there may be an offense under NSL, and that is a very serious offense. You also talk about the surrendering of fugitives. Because of some political reasons, some countries have suspended our return of fugitives agreements. I think that is very regrettable. Everyone should help to fight crimes. If political considerations override the rule of law, and because of political reasons, such agreements are suspended, only the criminals stand to gain. This should not happen. And as for the Chen Tong-kai case, Chen Tong-kai has already served his sentence for his offense committed in Hong Kong. Chen Tong-kai would very much like to go back to Taiwan to be subject to criminal sanction. But as you know, Taiwan is not willing to allow Chen Tong-kai to enter. The crime happened in Taiwan, and the evidence, including the cops and also other forensic evidence, including video clips, are in Taiwan. Taiwan has sufficient evidence to try the case. If they do not play around with politics and allow Chen Tong-kai to go back to Taiwan to stand trial, the entire incident will be resolved. I would again ask Taiwan not to play around with politics anymore and make use of the spirit of the rule of law to give full play to justice. I will defer to Mr. Zhang. Thank you. 2 questions. One, about oath-taking by public officers, and you asked me about other arrangements. First, I'd like to say that on the 21st of May, as I said, the Public Officers' Candidacy and Taking Office Miscellaneous Amendments Ordinance 2021 was gazetted. With regard to Basic Law, Article 104, there are 5 categories of public officers, and we have already laid out the detailed oath-taking arrangements for these. We have also added oath-taking by district council members. The last batch of district councillors have also taken their oath, and earlier on, the entire civil service has completed the oath-taking procedure. Right now, we are working on the oath-taking by EC members. As I said, up to yesterday, we have already got 90% of EC members who have returned their written oaths. We'd like to appeal to the remaining 10% who are members in waiting and who have not returned their oaths to do so by the latest, the 15th of October. So they will be included in the final members register that will be published on the 22nd of October. And so that as EC members, they will be able to make nominations and vote in the 2 ensuing elections.
Now, you also asked another question about the upcoming 2 elections, the Legislative General Election and the CE election, and how we could prevent the repeat of problems in the last election. Indeed, in the EC ordinary election, by and large, we were able to abide by the principles of fairness, impartiality, honesty, and safety. But there are hiccups in, say, the vote counting process and the delivery of ballot papers, issuing of ballot papers, etc. On this matter, the CE has urged the EAC to submit the relevant report as soon as possible. At the moment, we are working with the Electoral Affairs Commission and the REO in order to iron out details relating to the 2 remaining elections. Before the EAC's report is available, we will be taking we will have a stock-taking exercise for the upcoming 2 elections. All along, we stress the important principles of fairness, impartiality, honesty, and safety, and we also need to make sure that the elections are people-oriented and efficient. So we're able to hold open, fair, honest election and bring greater convenience to voters for the smooth conduct of the election. And for this purpose, a dedicated team has been set up under our bureau to join hands with the EAC in reviewing the relevant arrangements. We hope that in the next election, that is the electoral general election, we'll be able to make improvements for the benefit of voters. Next question. This reporter on the right with dark striped shirt. I am the reporter from Tai Kung Bao. I understand from the policy address you are requiring the policy bureaus to give better support. And what is the title to be used to fulfill the requirement? Regarding legislating on Article 23 of the Basic Law, can you give us some more concrete directions? Thank you for your question. In the policy address, we emphasize that we must integrate in the overall development of our country. So in terms of the ETOs on the mainland, they play a very vital role. And on how we could further help Hong Kong enterprises and Hong Kong businessmen developing their career and settling in the mainland, the ETOs will be playing a very important role. And the Chief Executive has urged the ETOs to review their functions on the mainland, including the title of ETOs, Economic and Trade Officers in Beijing, and there are also other offices, 4 other offices on the mainland. And there is room to perhaps change the title of these offices, and we will actively consider the suggestion. Basically, our plan at the moment is to review the functions of these offices of the mainland and the services they provide to see whether there is any room to expand their terms of reference. We have 5 offices and 11 contact points, and we'll consider whether the coverage is sufficient for the whole of the mainland and whether we could help serve Hong Kong enterprises and Hong Kong businessmen on the mainland. So this is something that we will do as quickly as possible. We'll conduct a review and see whether there is a need to rename these offices so that they can better reflect their functions and the service targets. Thank you. Yes, Mr. Tang, there was a question on Article 23. About legislation on Article 23 of the Basic Law, we will make reference to the bill tabled into the Council in 2003 as a starting point. But then in the past 18 years, there have been a lot of happenings. Especially in the past 2 years, there have been incidents of acts of endangering national security. So we will particularly take note of what happened in the past 2 years and consider how we could effectively legislate on Article 23 of the Basic Law to tackle these situations. And on the Hong Kong national security law, we will be making reference to the implementation experience of certain provisions and court verdicts and the latest developments. That means we will be making reference to the relevant laws in mainland China as well as other countries. This is not a simple exercise, and we hope to kickstart our work as soon as possible. Now, is it possible to complete this exercise within this term of government? Is really quite difficult. Like the chief executive earlier said, it is quite difficult for this term of government to complete this exercise. Still, we strive to complete this exercise within the next term of LegCo. Next question, this lady in white. Good afternoon, I'm from Tsingtao. I have two questions from Mr. Zhang, and I have a question about legislating on Article 23 for Mr. Tang. First, Mr. Zhang, about electoral arrangements. We are all concerned about the time taken for counting votes. And just now you answered the other reporter that you're conducting a comprehensive review and that a report will be submitted soon. Do you have a timetable when the report will be available, and any progress, any update on the review, and whether you can cite any examples, and that in the next LegCo general election you'll make improvements in these areas. The other point is about renaming ETOs on the mainland. Apart from changing the title of the office, will there be other changes? Expanding the establishment, having more offices, expanding the network coverage? And on legislating on Article 23, my question for Mr. Tang is that there are 7 offences set out in the legal framework, and earlier during media interviews you told us that the situation in Hong Kong is very different from back in 2003, and you would consider incorporating new offences under Article 23. Can you tell us what new offences are you considering to put in? And about consultation exercise, can you tell us how are you going to go about that? How many consultation sessions, and who will you be consulting? Let me first take the reporter's questions. First, on electoral arrangements, when the report will be available. According to the statutory requirement, the Electoral Affairs Commission is required to submit a report to the Chief Executive 90 days after the election has taken place. And it's been 3 weeks since the last election was held. And there is still time, according to the law, but then the CE has urged the EAC to submit a report as soon as possible relating to the relevant election arrangements. And therefore, the EAC will speed up its work as quickly as possible. But like I said, the LegCo general election will take place on the 19th of December, and we may not be able to wait for the EAC's report to be published before we set on our work. In fact, we're working concurrently, and we've set up a team internally to make a joint effort with the EAC and the REO in order to review the relevant polling and other election arrangements, including, well, the issue of ballot papers, polling arrangements, counting of votes, ballot boxes, candidates and their agents, and dissemination of information. We're going to review the matter in a comprehensive manner. In the process, we need to ensure that the elections are held in a safe, honest, fair, and impartial manner. At the same time, we need to make sure that the elections are efficient and people-oriented. For example, well, in fact, in relation to the special queue arrangement, we floated the idea with a view to facilitating elderly voters or voters who have mobility issues. would like to put our voters first. And for the upcoming electrical election, as you all know, this will be a very large-scale election with millions of eligible voters voting on the same day. We have over 600 polling stations and a lot of staff, and this requires seamless arrangements to ensure smooth conduct of the election. So we'd like to make sure that there'll be good compliance with the requirements in order to increase efficiency in the different areas. At the same time, we'd like to make sure that the election is convenient for voters. I understand we have a tight time frame, and we will be working with EAC proactively in taking forward the matter.
With regard to the review of ETOs on the mainland, we are doing it now. We do not have anything specific yet as to whether there will be an expansion, increase of establishment, or increase of contact points. We have nothing that is firmed up, but that will be a direction to consider. Say, should we increase the number of ETOs or contact points? Is there a need to do so? The aim is to better serve Hong Kong people and Hong Kong businessmen on the mainland, and also to allow us to integrate better into the overall development of the country, and also to allow them to have more services. Later on, when we have any specific results of the review, we will let the public know, including whether there is a need to rename the offices. Thank you. On legislating on Article 23. In Article 23, there are 7 offenses. 2 are already included in the NSL, including secession and subversion against the Central People's Government. So 5 others are not included in NSL: treason, sedition, theft of state secrets, prohibition of political bodies from establishing ties with foreign political organizations or bodies, and also prohibiting foreign political organizations or bodies from conducting political activities in the region. But these 5 offenses are touched upon in the Crimes Ordinance and the Societies Ordinance. But as to whether these 2 ordinances are sufficient to tackle what has happened in the past 2 years, we don't think so. Because under theft of state secrets, we have seen espionage conduct, and Hong Kong people have been asked to take photos of military facilities, but that can be too narrow. And so we might need to do something else in terms of what happened in the last 2 years. And yesterday, the CIA of the US said that they would set up a Chinese intelligence center. Smart Hong Kong people, we understand that this Chinese mission center of the CIA will need to get intelligence. Now, what will they do? Therefore, we have to be prepared. Secondly, consultation. We are researching into the laws now. Later on, we may go to the drafting stage, and by that time, we will then consider how we should conduct consultation. But there will be consultation. Next question. The reporter in Burgundy, top.
TMHK. The first one is for Mr. Zhang. Will the government hold by-elections for the district council? And if not, why? Because many councillors have been disqualified and the district councils can hardly run. And also, Mr. Tang, second and third questions for you, because the government is set to be studying on combating what you described as fake news. So can you tell us what is your definition of fake news, and how will officials ensure freedom of expression and freedom of press won't be undermined? And also, can you how exactly will Hong Kong react to the Chinese CIA unit? Thank you.
Thank you for your question. Well, we have no plan yet to hold another by-elections for the district councils. Well, actually, in the coming few months, we have to focus on preparing for the coming two very important elections. That's the Legislative Council general election as well as the Chief Executive election. So I don't see we have sufficient time or room to hold another such a large-scale by-election for this DC. And as we have stressed once and again, District Council is only an advisory body, and the government's work at district levels have been operating so far very smoothly. We will keep listening to members of the public as well through various channels to ensure that the public interests in district levels will be well addressed. I think we may further study in the future what's the way forward for the DC. Thank you.
So regarding your questions about freedom of expressions, I think the freedom of expression and also freedom of reporting and also freedom of assembly, it's all guaranteed under the Basic Law as well as the National Security Law. So regarding the definition of fake news, in fact, Security Bureau in conjunction with the Home Affairs Bureau is now doing some research work about overseas legislation relating to fake news. And so far we are at the researching stage. And you mentioned about how to deal with the Chinese unit set up by the CIA. I think I'm not pinpointing on a single unit, right? So in safeguarding the national security as well as the security of Hong Kong, we have, first of all, we have to have a robust own intelligence systems, and which will be supported by our operational unit. And then we have also to look at relevant legislation. That is the reason why we have to revitalize the Article 23. Thank you.
下一條問題啊，左邊
Next question, the gentleman on the left. Mr. Tang, I'm from Citizens News. I have 3 questions for you. About Chen Tong Kai, can you confirm that he's still in a safe house? Frankly, Chen Tong Kai will not illegally go to Taiwan, but when will the safe house arrangement end? Are you using taxpayers' money to be generous to Chen Tong Kai? And in 2003, the government said time and again that you would attach importance to the Johannesburg principles, but meaning that you will not impinge on freedom of speech. Will you abide by that this time around? The CE said you should not shy away from it, but will tackle the task head on. But then, because if you do that, are you afraid that you will dampen the confidence of bankers in Hong Kong? And then about cyber security. Can you require the ISPs to inspect content in real time or ask them to save up material so that in the tendering processes for infrastructure, would these ISPs have to be monitored by the government in the first place? Thank you. About Chen Tong Kai. Well, we cannot confirm whether someone is in a safe house or not in a safe house. This is because of operational considerations. Secondly, Article 23 is the same with all laws. Apart from looking at the act, we also have to look at the intention. Is it that if you say anything, you will be committing an offense? We'll have to see whether there is mens rea. We cannot just say, okay, you speak those 4 words, so you commit an offense. But we have to have the evidence. We have to prove that you have the intention and the act. And also the Department of Justice will see whether there is sufficient evidence before prosecution will be brought. It will not be a rash decision. Article 23 is just like the NSL. Foreign investors will find Hong Kong a safer place and may think that it is even better. Well, many people doubted that when we had the NSL, foreign investors would be scared away. But if you look at the data, you will see that our economy is just better than before. It is because NSL has brought calm and peace in Hong Kong, so foreign investors find Hong Kong a better choice. And then cyber security law. Our purpose is that with the wide application of technology, we have to ensure that when our infrastructure faces attacks, we can handle it. So the law will seek to build preventive mechanisms, and we will draw up cyber security systems. So the relevant companies will conduct cybersecurity reviews of their company systems. There should also be rehearsals done from time to time, and there should be reporting when there is a need. The purpose of the legislation is not to stop the flow of information. That is definitely not the aim of the legislation.
Well, I think the same principle applies. And like I said, we have no intention of obtaining all information. Of course, reporting of the incident is necessary. It's just like reporting a crime or a case of assault. You need to provide information, of course. Please speak into the mic. I'm talking about the Johannesburg principle and whether this will apply to Article 23. Like I said just now, as far as every piece of legislation is concerned, you need to have the actus reus and mens rea. You need to prove both mens rea and actus reus. You won't be prosecuted just for something you say. You need to make sure that there is sufficient evidence. The last question. This gentleman wearing a jacket in the second row. I'm Calvin from Economic Times. Good afternoon, secretaries. The first question is for Mr. Tang about legislation on Article 23. You mentioned that the legislation must be effective, meaning that it will be harsher than the version in 2003. So will you be adopting the common law principle in enacting local legislation, or will it be something similar to national security law, and that if you're arrested, you have difficulty getting bail? And will there be designated judicial officers and judges dealing with these cases, just like NSL cases? The next question is for both secretaries, Mr. Zhang and Mr. Tang. The policy address this year advocates selecting senior government officials by meritocracy, and both secretaries come from the discipline services. Is that a sign that in the future senior echelon of the government will comprise more officers from discipline services? And the other question is about the two secretaries being alumni of Chinese University of Hong Kong. What is your view on the dissolution of the student union of TMHK? Let me take the first question. In enacting local legislation, we abide by the common law principles, and reference will be made to the Hong Kong national security law, because after all, both pieces of legislation target acts of endangering national security, and they complement each other. Then the other question is about civil servants. We don't give regard to the background of candidates. As long as you perform well, you'll be selected on the basis of meritocracy, whether you are in the discipline services or not. And in fact, we also have the secretary here, who is an administrative officer, and he does a very good job. And about alumni of CUHK, and that the student union has been dissolved, and I am quite saddened by the news. But then, according to their notice, the university requires the student union to be registered, and if it's an organization that refuses to comply with the statutory procedure of getting registered, then I just feel regrettable. First, about civil service, I think meritocracy is something beyond question. It's time for us to restore order and fully implement the principle of patriots administering Hong Kong. And I think, strictly speaking, we need to have candidates who are through and through patriots and who staunchly loves Hong Kong in order to secure long-term prosperity and stability in Hong Kong. And like Mr. Tang said, there is no distinction between the candidates from discipline services or from other departments. As long as you are competent, you'll be able to give play to your potential, to safeguarding national security of the country, and also to tackle livelihood issues for the long-term development and prosperity, stability in Hong Kong. So I definitely support the idea of abiding by meritocracy in selecting suitable candidates to fill the positions. As for CUHK Student Union, I and Mr. Tang are graduates of CUHK. But we've also witnessed what happened in recent years, especially in relation to the chaos created by the CUHK Student Union president. And on this matter, all I can say is that I find it regrettable for the student union to be dissolved, since the student union can no longer safeguard the rights of CUHK students, and they should have a better understanding of how they should safeguard national security. Thank you.